Well, this is an interesting turn of events. This isn't even the original video I was supposed to be making right now, but I just found out some very interesting information, so I quickly got myself ready, and now I look like a 90s reporter. But that's appropriate because I have some important news to report. But actually, some pretty disturbing information, I guess, came out on the internet about Halloween. I started seeing people talk about the fact that Halloween is dying. There were barely any kids in the street, no one was opening their doors, and it was just dead. The reason why this makes this even more funny is because I don't even celebrate the holiday.
Guys, when I say funny, I mean it's funny how passionate and invested I am about this whole situation. Not that it's funny that kids are like not wanting to go Halloween trick-or-treating anymore. That's not what I mean. I mean, it's funny like me and how interested I am. The circumstance isn't funny though.
My family and I have not celebrated Halloween for years, so it wasn't really anything for me that was particularly important. However, I did notice that strangely, no one knocked our door, like at all. And I was just like, okay, maybe they're just following the rule. The lights aren't on, so they're not participating, right? That's kind of like a universal rule that we have in communities where the lights aren't on. That probably means that they're not participating. If there's no decorations, they're probably not participating. Especially if you know you live in a more religious area, there are most likely a lot of people who are not going to be celebrating it. Okay, cool, fine and dandy. Didn't think too much about it. I did not realize that this was an occurrence happening globally. Not globally, nationally. Across America. It was happening across America. People are looking through the streets on Halloween night and there is nobody there, or people are knocking on doors and no one is answering. Even the take one candy bowls that normally would be finished by like the first group of kids that go there was untouched. As in, no one is trick-or-treating anymore. I specifically watched Halo Haley's video on this. She showed a bunch of TikToks of specifically parents and new homeowners who were really excited to celebrate and leave candy out and give it to the kids. All of them being met with extreme disappointment because just nobody came. So of course, what happened? Now in this video, I'm going to get back to being a little bit more theoretical, but also utilizing social psychology as my main standpoint in the way that I will explain certain things. But again, they are very theoretical. I want this to be more of a discussion than me lecturing you guys, if you will. Because there are, in my opinion, several other reasons on why Halloween may be dying that isn't just the obvious of technology. Because I imagine that's the first thing that everybody jumps to is they're just inside on their iPads. These iPad kids, they just, you don't want to stay inside all day, which is true. I think that is definitely a big contributing factor. So let's go ahead and get the obvious out of the way first. With the very rapid rise of technology and iPad kids, as I was just talking about in my last video, kids don't really want to go outside anymore. That's where the phrase touch grass came from. Kids like genuinely don't really like going outside, it seems. They would rather just stay inside watching TV or watching Cocomelon on their iPad. That just seems a lot more fun in their eyes than having to get dressed to go outside. Even though Halloween still seems like a dream for children. I mean, they get to go and dress up, wear these cool costumes, and they get candy. A lot of people were saying that it doesn't make sense that kids would not want free candy. But we can also factor in the idea that maybe kids don't want to do it because they see it as childish. I think I talked about this in my Why Kids Act Like Adults video, whatever the title was. Or if I didn't talk about it, I thought about it and forgot to talk about it. But the way that older people like myself tend to ridicule children's entertainment, children's hobbies, and the things that they say, or just tend to make fun of it, it makes them a little self-conscious. That's why I tend to be very careful about the things that I say around my siblings. Like, I know I just made a video dunking on children's entertainment, but I only do that here on YouTube. I never say stuff like that around them because I don't want them to feel stupid for liking the things that they like. Sure, I know what subjectively, what good content is. But essentially, as long as we're monitoring how long they're on the TVs for, if they want to watch stuff like that, then fine. There's nothing wrong with enjoying some childish cartoons. Yes, they may not have the most intricate plot, but it's entertainment for them. But I believe a lot of these kids who want to grow up too fast is obviously because they look up to older people. Like, children are very heavily influenced by the older people around them, or even the people that they see on the internet. They want to be just like their mom and their dad. They want to be just like their older siblings. A lot of their hobbies, their likes and dislikes comes from the older people in their life. Speaking from experience, again, I have younger siblings. They're exhibiting this all the time. So children want to do things that are less kiddie because of this kind of ridicule that we give of staying young and childish is a bad thing. Hence the reason why young girls want to dress older and wear heavy makeup, and that they don't have any third places. They want to stay on their phones all day. They want to stay inside rather than going outside and frolicking in the streets for free candy. They want to do what they think the older people would do also. which is just stay inside. Like the I'm too old for Halloween, Halloween's for babies type of mindset, even though they are children and that's the prime age you would go trick or treating. They're trying to replicate what they think older people would do. I say would because the opposite was actually happening. It seems like teenagers and older, like young adults, were the ones doing the trick or treating most of Halloween. And a lot of the comments that I've seen, a lot of teenagers and young adults were the ones saying that they were the ones walking the streets in costumes and that they felt weird going to the door asking to trick or treat because, that's normally something little kids do. So interestingly enough, little kids are the ones feeling like I'm too grown for this. And the older ones are the ones wanting to go trick-or-treating. I would have expected the other way around, but what's probably happening here is due to the pandemic. And I know we always have to go back to that, but because it's not just the fact that people are introverted more, it seems, but they lost a lot of opportunities, a part of a prime part of their childhood, because they weren't allowed to go outside and make friends and blah, blah, blah. Because the thing is, the teenagers of today most likely did go trick-or-treating when they were younger. So these activities, while seemingly childish, are really important to the older kids when they had to stop seeing other people and doing fun things like that when they were younger. I mean, around the pandemic, basically. Because a 15-year-old would have been like 10, 11 at that time, right? So a lot of that was ripped away from them after knowing what they had. That's the important part of it. They knew what trick-or-treating was like, I would assume. A lot of them went before. So their older self is trying to heal that younger self and do it again. Little kids who didn't do it don't know the joy of trick-or-treating. It's quite literally that statement of you don't know what you're missing out on. They don't. The little kids really don't. If trick-or-treating had been declining the way that it is right now, that means that they've never experienced the joy of picking out a costume, knocking on doors, and getting candy. So it isn't really something that they miss out on the way the teenagers and the young adults miss out on it because they know what the fun is like. And also I understand that a lot of the older audiences were trying to keep the tradition alive as well. But yeah, so just found that to be very, very interesting because again, you would think it was the opposite, but there were more teenagers and older people doing the trick-or-treating than the kids. I think the kids just aren't interested because they haven't ever tried it and they're too busy watching Cocomelon in order to understand the fun they're missing out on. But the thing is, it wasn't just the streets that were empty, it's doors that weren't opening. Apparently, people would be outside knocking on doors and no one answered. Now, this is a theory that could be wrong or right. I mean, technically all theories are like that, but this is like very, very theoretical. I'm going to start my explanation with a brief Islamic story that I read before. I think it also could just be applied to any religion, but I specifically remember reading it from an Islamic app, Storytime app or something like that. And I haven't read it in a while, so I apologize if I get anything wrong, but this is the general gist of it.
Story time.
One day, people in a village were supposed to give an offering to Allah or God. Everybody was told to come to like a well or this little hole in the ground and give an offering of milk so that the next morning they could pray and celebrate and all that other kind of stuff. Well, one man was pondering in his household and he was like, I don't think I want to do that. Milk is expensive. The bills are high right now. I don't got milk to be spilling on the floor, right? So he had a genius idea. Instead of putting milk in the hole as the offering, he'll just put water. How would they know? They're not going to tell that the milk was watered down because of 1 cup of water. It'll be unnoticeable. So nighttime fell, and he went to the offering place and dumped in his cup of water. So when morning time came around, everyone came to the well or the circle or the hole or whatever you want to call it, and it was filled with water. Yeah, so everybody had the same idea of filling it with water because they thought everyone else was going to fill it with milk and no one would notice their water. But they all put water. Again, I'm probably missing out some details, but that's like the gist of the story. So now that I've told you that, I'm going to apply it to this. I believe people weren't opening their doors probably because they all thought that everyone else was going to open their doors. So they were like, they'll just go to another door. Somebody else will give them candy. And then no one ended up giving away candy. I say this mainly because that's the exact thought that I had, but I don't celebrate it. So when nighttime started to fall, I was like, dang, they're going to knock on our door and we don't have any candy for them. It was like, there's other people in the community. Again, no one ended up knocking on our door, ringing our doorbell that night. But it's this sort of shift of responsibility that we kind of have this, that person will do it. There are plenty of social experiments that actually did this, like somebody falling in a crowd of people and no one stopping to help pick them up or see if they're okay because everyone's kind of shifting the responsibility. That person will do it. They're closer. They'll do it. They look like they're a better fit for the job. Like nobody actually wants to take initiative to do it. I feel like that's what happened here with the candy situation. I think adults just didn't want to go buy candy. We're too lazy to buy candy. just weren't excited for Halloween anymore. And nobody opened their doors because they expected everyone else to open their doors. But because we were all thinking the same thing, no one ended up opening their doors. Just a thought, though, just a theory. I don't know if that's actually the case, but I feel like that might contribute to the issue if no one was willing to open their doors to give candy, probably because they expected everyone else to. Or maybe they didn't open their doors because they feel unsafe to do so. Now, this one is also kind of not a stretch, but I don't know how big of a reason that was it. But when I went to my history class, somebody did address this because we were talking about it. And we're like, nobody came to trick or treat. Some guy yelled, the world has gotten more dangerous. That is an interesting claim, but something that I would like to argue is that maybe the dangers are just more obvious thanks to technology and better forensic and criminal investigations, and also just finding the criminals in the first place. Maybe that's just gotten better over time, which it has. Security cameras are a lot better. People have their own security systems like Ring and Eufy and stuff like that. So maybe a rise in crime is really just the crime rate is more noticeable. And because people are seeing it more, they are beginning to become more afraid of the streets and the outside world and get more paranoid. And then, speaking of paranoia, and also my last theory for this, there's just a huge lack of trust within communities. You know that thing that people used to do? I don't know if people still do it now, but knock on your neighbor's door for like a cup of sugar or something like that. And is that still a thing that people do? I don't know. But I can assure you nothing like that happens today, at least not in America. If I went knocking on my neighbor's door for a cup of sugar, they'd probably call the police. And I've noticed this firsthand, that there is this noticeable lack of trust and just community in communities. Specifically, this one community that we lived in 2 houses ago, really big community, several houses inside of it. And sure, like we talked to our neighbors every once in a while. But after that, we would pretend each other doesn't exist. I remember seeing them in the stores one time and I didn't even recognize them. That's how little we talk to each other. The adults aren't chatting with each other anymore, sitting in lawn chairs, talking about the economy or whatever. No one wants to wave anymore. Does anyone realize that? Like, common courtesy and just basic respect is not a thing anymore. No one wants to wave. They will stare you dead in the eye. You can wave at them and they will not wave back for some reason. A lot of them will just completely avoid eye contact. And listen, here's the thing, right? I'm a major introvert. I really like to be alone. If it was my decision, we wouldn't be living in a community. I am absolutely that person that would live up in the woods, not talking to anybody for the rest of eternity. I'm cool with that. But if I'm gonna live in a community with other people, at least pretend that I exist. Nobody's creating meaningful connections with each other anymore, even though they live right next to each other. So it could just be that parents don't feel safe letting their kids go out. I mean, essentially, they shouldn't really be wandering the streets alone, right? Because when I went trick-or-treating a long time ago, when I used to, my parents would come with me. But do you guys just like send your kids out in the community to do that? If you do, then again, maybe the parents don't feel safe sending them out because they just don't trust their neighbors. A lack of sense of community in communities could be a big reason why Halloween is dying, because it is a social group effort. But if we don't trust each other, we don't like each other, we don't talk to each other, it makes sense why no one would want to celebrate it and it's not fun. And thus, the streets are dead, no one's opening their doors, and everyone's just depressed now. So like I said, this was me being very theoretical. I just wanted to come on here and talk about it. Really, I want this to be a very open discussion. I want you guys to talk about it in the comments. Tell me what Halloween was like in your state, in your country. If you're not from America, tell me, is it the same way there or is it different? Again, as someone who doesn't celebrate Halloween, this wasn't a huge deal for me until I recognized the impact it was having and how large of a scale it was happening. And I think there are a lot of social psychology aspects to it that cause, a lot of these issues. So that's all for today. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.